express opposition, or design a functioning society that works. A society that works, expressing opposition, or on the other side, designing ultimately a world that works. And world, I don't mean the natural world, I mean the world of human beings. Hello, YouTube internet friends. I'm having some sort of mental issues about, which I've had for a long time actually, in terms of YouTube posting and not posting, and listening to people that are very sincere and very committed to their platforms and their worldview and their expression of that worldview. And I think, like I said in the beginning, to express opposition, I think is paramount, is very important, especially when we're going through a period of an extreme aberration even in the sense of a long history of a world that presents itself that is so destructive and detrimental to our well-being, even within the context of that. If you look at the history of, or if you look at history directly, it's a litany of suffering, tragedies, terrible events, people doing terrible things to each other, which are contrary to our being, nature. Somehow we're repulsed, like what is a normal human being is repulsed by the history that we're taught. And to continue along that line, a normal being is repulsed by the way we are being taught, or what we're asked to believe, what we're asked to comply with, what we're asked to be a part of. There is, the way it has developed over a long period of time, what I perceive is there to be something so offensive in the way things are structured. Even our entire cultural, social networks hinge on complying with something that fundamentally is contrary to our nature. So I say I appreciate channels on YouTube that are fundamentally in opposition to, just as a prerequisite. If you present yourself as a compliant or as a presenter that is fundamentally compliant going along, the only other possibility I see is to be actively involved in creating a reality that works. And I mean a social reality. I'm not talking about nature and to mucky muck in the natural order, the way the white coats have now taken it upon themselves to improve on the so-called DNA and all that kind of, what is that activity that's related to altering something in our nature to improve on God's work. So I've decided, I've decided to continue to comment because I'm fundamentally in opposition. Take me to Cuba. It's just a nice image. I mean, that star is used all the time, and I think it has a history. The U.S. flag and all other flags, many flags have this star, and it just happens to end up on a Cuban revolutionary's hat. Oh, how about that? And then the Americans are like, they have their knickers in a knot about people that have the star on their hat, and they have 50, some of them, on their flag. It's again, reality breaks down in terms of what we're being told and what we're actually experiencing. And I think this is my point today. What I find, what I would consider to be the naked Corona Emperor, the naked crown emperor, the naked Corona emperor, we're being again hoodwinked within the context of this ongoing, this continuous, this monumental sense of dysfunction in a historical and a contemporary present sense, that we're expected to go along with something that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. To be told, to begin with, there's an evil terrorist virus that is going to decimate the human population. We're being told to accept that people are dying from this thing, from this particular virus. As this story proceeds over the last 7-8 months, some among us who are within this contrarian nature, who are very suspicious of anything that comes that we're en masse expected to accept, we have within our nature a suspicion about this, and sure enough, it turns out that it goes from deaths to infections or cases without any, now, cases without illness. So this Corona Emperor has no clothes, that any child, any person left with the mind of a child can understand that we're being hoodwinked. And the dangerous people, I was listening to, I forget the Australian woman who talks, Sally somebody. Her name isn't Sally, but she goes under the channel name Sally something. Says the most dangerous people are the people that comply. And conformity has always been a big issue in terms of my concern. Like what I get very annoyed or offended by is actually conformity. You don't have to do anything nasty to anyone, except even if you comply and go along with. And I just saw a fabulous film, a German film called Wie die anderen leben. I'm not sure, that title doesn't make sense. It's about East Germany, post-war East Germany until the wall opened up in 1989. And it tracks intellectuals and artists to some extent, and how that segment of the population was persecuted and removed from the operational sphere of the story that they weren't complying with. And I think, as it turns out, in East Germany, the records indicate they were fabulous record keepers. They had files on everybody. It turned out, and you can correct me, there were as much as 90% of the population was in some way or other not just complying, but actively involved in providing information to the reptiles who were keeping track of everyone. So they didn't have that digital network that exists now. We don't have to be asked to pass on information. We do it willingly through the digital networks, our phones. People, don't be ridiculous with your phones. You don't need those tablet phone things. I still have a flip phone. Mind you, my connection to the internet, it's a continuous tracking device. We all know this now. Snowden has revealed this. So we don't need to be actively involved in providing the information. You know, it's like, how many fingers do you see? I see, you know, Winston, how many fingers do you see? And Winston says, I see 5. So people are saying, I see 5 fingers. I see five fingers. And this is the danger. This is what clearly was the danger in East Germany under the Stasi network. And when you look at films that have plenty of truth revealed, like V for Vendetta, and how the entire system is structured, the corruption in the system, and then they present the Big Brother type John Hurt in V for Vendetta as this ogre with ugly teeth and an ugly face, and he's like in your face all the time and making aggressive statements to intimidate. It's not that symbol. The symbol has been embellished, and I understand that there's a kind of artistic license, but in real life, our own leaders don't, we look at the film and say, well, this isn't happening to us. Au contraire, I beg to differ. When we are in a Stasi-like situation where compliance is 90%, and I would say that the mask wearing stuff is at a 90% level. This is something that is now has completely absorbed, has been completely absorbed into the psyche of the contemporary human to wear a mask, the same way that the Stasi had basically absorbed the entire population, with the exception of a few contrarian that understood how wrong the system was treating its subjects, its people, that we're literally at the same level. This is what I see. So the story that we're being told makes no sense, number one. We're asked to accept something that is experientially not in fact happening. So when we are told that there is a vicious, nasty piece of molecular virus of some kind that is infiltrating our system and killing everyone, or now it's just potentially killing anyone, and beyond that, it's you have it, but you're not sick, anyone. This makes no sense. And it's very clever because we've come through that naked emperor routine. I mean, Hans Christian Andersen understood this very well in terms of how culture and society basically perpetrates its dysfunctions through suspending our own inner knowledge in order to comply with something that makes no sense. This is really well documented. I'm just saying this, not, I mean, a lot of people understand this and know this. It's more than 10% of the people. I would say that probably 50 or 60% of the people know this, but only maybe 10, as in East Germany, are determined to resist this kind of inner knowledge, this understanding. And the ones that are completely lost, let's say the 30 or 40%, well, it's just kind of like, we need to accept that. We need to, somewhere I say to myself, I'm not going to say, wake up, oh, you stupid people. That's not the point. The point is we need to accept our circumstances within the knowledge that we have, that we're able, as much as we are able, to resist this kind of onslaught, this thing that comes at us every day, every morning. There is no news cycle anymore where there even for 30 seconds, except if there is a song being played or some kind of entertaining something or other. It is continuous. It is a pounding. It is a continuous pounding of this naked emperor. This naked emperor, this crown emperor, is continuously being propagated without any space in between. And all the people that are invited to comment, never, not once did I hear anyone in opposition to, in what is understood to be the mainstream, this media that now basically is all there is in terms of I guess the 90% of the people that are completely incapable, or not incapable, but that large portion of the population, the way in East Germany, the way it's documented, how they not only complied, but they actually were actively engaged in giving facilitating the reptile to continue the way it was. These people are a huge problem. These people are a huge, even bigger than the reptiles, the few that are running the joint and creating these stories and pushing out this narrative that we're supposed to accept without any question whatsoever. You're going to see 5 fingers I hold up, and every morning when you listen to the mainstream stuff, they're holding up their fingers and saying, how many fingers do you see? How long will this continue? When will they be convinced that they no longer need to do this? What happens when this stops? When this campaign stops? I ask myself, what happens when the campaign stops to see the fingers? And unfortunately, the way it's progressing, this is with other people that have said this, I don't perceive there to be a near end in sight, because this doubling down has been facilitated. We have been accustomed, we have been made accustomed to the present situation through the history we've come from, or obviously from early education, all the stuff we're going through, and what is perceived to be important culture, the culture that is being exhibited. From my point of view as a painter, I saw this probably very clearly in the last post-Fukushima, I would say. I realized how completely orchestrated this cultural event with the Damien Hirst and the Ai Weiweis and the Kuhns and the Schnabels, and even artists that are expressing in a way, what's his name, Eric Fischel, people, Cecily Brown, Issa Essenhai. Uh, there are many promoted artists that actually facilitated and set us up, even among the contrarians, to be somehow seduced and involved in this dysfunctional system of storytelling, where we say to ourselves, well, it may be very a competent painting. It may appear to be, or very fluid. There's a segment among artists that is very tactile, very like myself. I'm a very tactile artist. I appreciate that fluidity of motion, of using your material in whichever way you decide to use it, that makes you feel very much engaged and involved. It's sensual, it's fluid. These artists are promoted, these artists are out there. But what emerges out of the surface of the paintings that they produce is, well, my response is repulsion. Like, as I dive into this, I'm repulsed. I'm repulsed. I'm absolutely repulsed. And not the way I'm repulsed with a Goya painting of Saturn eating his children. I mean, it's a repulsive painting, but it's also the fluidity of it. Uh, it's like a rebuilding of my psyche. The Goya stuff is rebuilding my psyche, whereas the present cultural heroes are destroying my psyche. This is the difference, and I suppose I would have to attempt to explain this a little more in how if you go to a museum and you're looking at something and you scratch your head and you're trying to determine whether or not this is of value to you. You don't know what the hell is going on. You're kind of, like I say, seduced by it, but at the same time you're scratching your head. Or if you're standing in a museum like the Prado and you see these Goya paintings, I'm talking more about the offensive ones, not the earlier ones that he painted. Mind you, even the earlier ones in their beauty, so-called beauty, he painted the royal family. They looked like the pig family of, the first pig family of Spain, the royal family images, the paintings of the, anyway, what was my point? So that, as I started this video, I think I'll end it here. The idea, I truly appreciate the people, the contrarian, ironic, huh? Like I say, the star, it's not even contrarian, it's been absorbed into the bosom of culture. But that symbol of being in opposition is very important. And then the other side of that is, what is our ability to create a reality that works? Like personally, I have some great comments by different people. One person commented after my "What is your calling?" video. I brought up the idea of a calling, and this person was talking about their circumstances, about, they've had a life, they supported a family, and probably they're now in their 50s, 60s, or maybe even a bit older, and they're talking about how connected he was to the plants around him. He had an innate understanding of what plants need, and to create within his realm of influence a garden, a situation that actually gives the plants what they want and make them be what they want to be. This is like something innately, a calling the desire to be in communion with the plants around you. This is magnificent. I love this. This is how we change the world into a functioning entity for ourselves, a social order that actually works. And that is when I really loved this comment. It was a bit lengthier, going into the details of being dedicated and committed to this act of making the world better. This is the other side of it. So we have the contrarian, which is fundamentally what people, when they talk about YouTube, like my type of people, what they're called truthers. I'm not a truther. I'm not interested in truth because it doesn't make any difference. Neither am I interested in information. There is some room for it, but I am interested in the spirit of the person presenting themselves. Are they presenting themselves as a solution or as a problem? And you can be a problem giving us all the information, like the Wachowski brothers in V Vendetta or Matrix, but they're part of the problem. Do you see what I'm saying? That this art is part of the problem. As much as it gives some insight, it's still involving us in some way, seducing us into the problem that they're expressing or exposing. And the only way to overcome this individually, like I said, is that sense of self that that pushes itself to the foreground in terms of a calling. And like this commenter was saying, it didn't happen to him until he was about 40 or something, or even past that, realizing the dedication and love for this aspect of his world, this understanding of the world around him, that he would see in a restaurant, he would see a plant on a patio that was dying and feeling for this life form that was dying. It's like this definitely is an extraordinary sense of self in relation to what is not working out there. So yeah, I I, I, I fluctuate back and forth. I fluctuate back and forth because I listen to different channels during the day. I make my paintings, and I have people going on in the background. Mostly now it's music. I've really got to reintroduce uh, to Weather Report and Jaco Pastorius, a fabulous musician, fabulous bass player. He had problems. Also, the later Miles, Tutu, and Human Nature, and the sort of orchestral feeling Miles that came out at the end was quite beautiful. So I encourage, or I inspire myself with music. Music has always been important, but I keep track of what it is. Okay, last point. What it is in certain people I listen to on channels where I see the seductive quality, even the good intentions, but it breaks down because it's fundamentally the spirit of the person is withheld. It's like the advantage in a painting is it expresses itself. There are, no matter what a person does to hide themselves, I mean, it's possible. If you look at somebody like Andrew Wyeth, or I don't know who to pick on. There are many artists that have been even promoted as high art and all that, but they don't reveal of themselves. And it's difficult to extract the soul out of a painting. This is not an easy thing to do because, as you see with children, when they produce something that is called an artwork, they're wearing everything out in the open. Everything is out in the open. Nothing is hidden. And whatever they try to hide, you can still look through it, right? So this is the nature. This is how I approach my work. Even though I've had many years to practice it, this element of instilling and infusing it with my spirit is paramount. It's the most important thing. Whether you're clever in your art or whether you're rudimentary and clumsy, it doesn't matter at that point, because what we need to communicate to each other is that we're brothers and sisters within this sense of making the place better somehow. And if the art, either through, like Goya, I bring him up all the time, through a violent confrontation from confronting us, or just such extreme beauty, And you know, there. Let's see, extreme beauty. Where do I find extreme beauty in art? What comes to mind? Well, I look at classical art and I see it. I see this. This level of beauty. But I'll even put this out. It's like the some of the Fauvists, let's say, the explosion of color, or let's say Impressionist Fauvists. You have, even to some extent, Matisse, the simplicity of colors working together. Yes, there is a sense of beauty that generates, that invigorates me. And I think this is very important to have, especially at a time when we're all sort of in a Stasi network, the Stasi network of extracting our souls. We have to put soul back out there somehow. And it's not just done by giving me the truth, the truth, the truth. It has to take a form other than just telling me the information. As much as that, it's like, okay, you need to become creative and inventive about that. And my fundamental creativity is not on YouTube. I'm just having thoughts and reflections on YouTube. My sense of self is presented through the paintings I make. And whether or not people look at them, this is now another issue, of course, with all the restrictions and shutdowns, the ridiculous restrictions and shutdowns. It's unlikely that many people will see the paintings. And if this continues, like I say, it's not going to end soon. It could last 5, 10 years. The Stasi, wow, well, they lasted till 89. It was from the end of the war, 45, 46, the East German state was created. And then it took another 40 some years, 43 years. It lasted 43 years. People, get ready. Is this what we want? 43 years of a Stasi type of circumstance that we're in? Keep wearing your mask. Keep wearing your mask. The owners, the reptiles, are just like, they're laughing. They're laughing into their soup. They're just saying, look how easy this has been. Even in Stasi land, it was probably more difficult than what it is now. So this naked emperor has convinced us, and this conviction that people walk around with, not thinking, are their souls are being extracted every time they put on the mask. This is what's happening. This is my understanding. I think that it sort of wraps it up, my feeling of wanting to express the two sides of things, right? The idea that you present yourself as opposition, but at the same time there is this sense of self that is what I refer to as a calling, that exhibits itself in the real world in some way, that to make a difference in the real world. These are the kind of things that are functioning. So yes, we oppose the oppression by the reptiles that don't look like John Hurt or Big Brother in 1984. They're quite more subtle in their thing, although Kissinger looks pretty brutal. I mean, they all look brutal to me in whatever way, but it's not as obvious. The films make it obvious, but then we get complacent to understand that it's actually, you don't have to look like a reptile to act like one.